All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Songwriting Simplified. All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome. Normally with me and Johnny Guy, but for a very last minute and very last minute reasons, Johnny cannot be here. Unfortunately, he has a family issue to attend to at the very last second. So he called me just about half an hour ago and said, could I do the show on my channel on my own because he has a family issue that needs his immediate attention. So I said, yeah, fine. And that was that. So we are all set and organized, just about, to improvise a show. And I seem to recall the last time we improvised a show, it went pretty well. So hopefully we'll have the same results tonight. And I'm going to need a lot of help from you guys. So have your best questions and your best brain cells engaged. And hopefully all will be well. So some of you will have probably only just got the announcement that it's over on my channel here instead of Johnny Gibe's channel. So hopefully you will have received a notification. If you're subscribed to my channel, you'll have received a notification that I'm live. And hopefully that won't have confused the heck out of you. And maybe if you've not read the announcement that I put up on Home Studio Trainer Facebook group, you'll have made, kind of sense of it all. So we got 13 people here, and Ray Hunt has said hello, and my good friend Bob Berda, who calls himself Just Bob, is here. He says, singing in a raspy voice. Well, hello, Johnny. You look swell, Johnny. Thank you. And Perry Brenning is here. Steve Mann. Yes, he did. Good. And Bobby Booth and Paul Lucas. Rick Grant is here. And he says, one of the first Songwriting Simplified live streams I've attended. Usually Wednesday evenings are busy. Well, yes. Yeah, for a lot of people, I think Wednesday evenings are generally pretty busy. But the good thing now with the way live streams are played back is you can also get the chat in real time as well. So you get to see kind of what's gone on and questions that have been asked and hilarious, amusing commentary that has been provided by members of the audience. I guess I could call you the audience. Can I call you audience? I guess I can I? And my good friend Rainer at Y64 Studio says, good morning. And it's 3 minutes past midnight here, so literally ticked over into, I guess it would be Thursday now, which is great. So Thursday morning, and we're over halfway through the week, which is crazy. Darren Bryant is here, and he says hello. So we got 16 people in, and we're only 4 minutes or so into the show, which is great. So I think we've got a good little group, a good little gathering. Which is fantastic. So thank you all for coming at the last minute over to my place instead of Johnny's place, where we have all the fancy transitions and all of that he has. Chris says, not audience, mates is better, or students? Students. Yeah, all right. Okay. Yep. I mean, you are my audience, but you're also my fans, apparently. Some people like to refer themselves as fans, which is interesting and cool. And friends, you are all definitely my friends. And some of you very much are my students, because some of you I have actually taken on personally as students, which is very cool. Just Bob says lipsters we are. That's cool. I like that, lipsters. That's very good. Reminds me of what the first fighter plane that the German Air Force ever made for the First World War, and they were called Jazzters. I don't know why they were called that, but they were. Had nothing to do with the music, because jazz music really was not known outside of New Orleans, Kansas, and Chicago and New York. So that it would, Germans probably would never have really heard of it. So I don't know why they called them jazzsters. But anyway, Lipsters is pretty cool. And Chris says he votes for that too. Beatrice likes to call me the professor, which I find exceedingly entertaining. Thank you, Beatrice, that you like to dignify me with that title. I don't think I'm really a professor because I'm not a university lecturer or anything like that. I mean, I have done university lecturing. I did a little bit of university lecturing on arranging, and I did some on audio engineering as well at one of the universities here in Edinburgh, of which there are a few. So Bobby agrees with Beatrice calling me the professor. That's interesting. I seem to remember that one of Doctor Who's companions called him the professor, which interesting. Again, sensei. Yes, I have heard that term being bandied about as well. Jazz calls me Johnny, which is fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, titles are very, very nice and all of that, but at the end of the day, I am just Johnny, just like my good friend Bob is just Bob, and that's pretty cool. I like that. All right, so we got 21 people here, and we are 6 and 40 seconds, 6 minutes and 40 seconds or so into the show. So, you know what? Because I don't have all of the fancy transitions, and sharing my screen, I can do, but it takes up a bit more bandwidth to do that, and then of course the sound can get a little bit garbled. Studio One coming down Google Hangouts can be a little bit garbled, so I would do the beginner's tip like Johnny does, but I don't really have quite the broadcast quality or the bandwidth to do that, so we will maybe skip that and we'll maybe talk about other things. So normally Johnny and I would have a talking point that we would get on Skype and we would talk about earlier in the day. But as I say, there's been a family situation that Johnny has to take care of. So we didn't really have a chance to have that conversation. So do I have a talking point? Nah, not really. So we're kind of making this one up as we go. So you guys are going to have to help me as much as you possibly can with some really cool questions and that kind of thing. And I will try not to and quite so much. Raina says, can you show me to set up the red book for a song to finish a master for copy? When you're in the project page, there's a section in the project page where you need to enter the metadata. And I think if you were to go to my YouTube channel, there's a couple of videos that I did on the project page as updated for Studio One 3.5. Those are still relevant. So kind of how you enter the metadata there is still relevant. And essentially what Redbook is Redbook is the standard for all of that kind of data. And also it is the gap between the songs, what they call the pause between the songs. That is all, I think that's 2 seconds, I think it is. There's like a 2-second pause between the ending of one song and the start of the second. There are some mastering houses that have moved away from Redbook a little bit. And know what they tend to do now is they tend to build in a pause at the end and of one song and the beginning of another. Let's see. Robert Overbeek says, got my audio routed to D drive now. Fantastic. Well done. Really pleased to hear that, and I'm glad that the videos that I sent over to you helped. That's very cool. B7 says, B7. There you go, B7. He says, any fans of Notion 6? I have Notion 6. I understand it works really well with Studio One. It most certainly does. It has interoperability with Studio One, which is really cool, which means you can send to and fro between Notion and Studio One, and the other way around. So I can send audio to Notion and Notion can print a chart, or I can send a chart written in Notion and send the audio to Studio One for mixing and mastering. So it works pretty well. I would say there's a degree to which it is still in its infancy a little bit. That's not to say that it's not worth using, it's not worth partaking in, because it is. It's just, it works, and it works very well. But, I think, it's obviously not the finished article yet, this whole interoperability. I think they've kind of got the bare basics down. So it works. Fundamentally, it works. And now it's all about improving and finessing how that interoperability works now. So it works very, very well. JJ Seppert says, I'm music theory illiterate. Can you explain how to find the time signature of a song? Yes. And you know what? You don't have to be music theory literate to figure out where the time signature of a particular song is. Most popular songs are going to have 4 beats in the bar. So normally you're going to be hearing the chord change on the first beat of every bar. Sometimes you will have 2 chord changes in the bar, and you'll have 1 chord on beat 1 and 1 chord on beat 3. But you also often get the kick drum on beat 1 and the snare drum on beats 2 and 4. So using all of that, I keep smacking my mic. Sorry about that. Using all of that information, you should be able to find what the time signature of a song is. Now, not every song is going to be in 4. A lot of popular songs are, but most of them are. But some you get in 3, some you get in 6, some you get in 5. Like, for example, that is that is Dave Brubeck's Take 5, which it's a jazz piece, but it was a monster popular hit. Ridiculous how big of a hit that was, and that is in 5/4. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 4, 5, 1, 4, 5, 1, 4, 5, 1, 4, 5, 1. And the way you know where the 1 is because you get this 4, 5, 1, 4, 5, 1, 4, 5, 1. Okay, and 3/4, for example, would be kind of like a waltz. So, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So, and then of course there's other time signatures, 7, 5, 9, 11, 13. And if you are a big fan of groups like Dream Theater or Rush, they like to play with all sorts of time signatures like 33/8 or various other ridiculous variations of that. So yeah, there's those. So I hope that helps. Rick asks, what exactly is Notion 6? Notion 6 is Presonus's scoring software. They didn't start it. It was started by another company, and then Presonus bought it a few years back, and they have since updated it tremendously, and it works really, really well. So if you're into writing out guitar chord charts, or if you're wanting to write lead sheets so you can get some lead sheet sales, because that's still a thing. People still want to have the lead sheets of your songs so they can play your songs on their own pianos or on their own guitars, that kind of thing. That's a good way to do it. Ray says, can I make a video of how Notion works? I can certainly cover the basics. I have been meaning to do a Notion video actually since since Notion 6.0 came out, which was a joint release with Studio One 3.3, I think it was. So yeah, so it's been a little while, and I've been meaning to do it. And of course, Perry Brenning is also citing I Want to Live in America from West Side Story, yep, which is a 2/4/3/4 kind of thing. One, two, three. And in actual fact, although you're saying it's 2/4/3/4, it isn't really. It's just that there's like this hemiola kind of thing in the first phrase, da 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 da. And you think that's 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. It's not actually. It's it's more like it's still in 3/4. And it's like 1 and one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Could be 3/4, could be 6/4. So there you go. And yeah, it's kind of mixed meters. Another good mixed meter actually is to do. Let me see. To do 5 and 7. Penny says directed in 2/4/3/4. No, you wouldn't direct it in 2/4 and 3/4 because it isn't 2/4 and 3/4. I know it has that accent that makes you think that it is, but it isn't. So as a conductor, having also MD'd West Side Story here in the UK, that's not how I conducted it. You can do it that way. You can go da 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 da. You can do it that way, or you can go da 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 da. So you can do it in so you can do it's kind of like a bouncing 3, which you would do if you're doing like a very fast 3. So yeah. Wouldn't that be 5/4? No, West Side's I Want to Be in America is not 5/4. Because the first half of it is not 2/4. It's a little hemiola. It's basically it's a set of 6/8 notes, but phrased in groups of 3. But it's not. It's 6/8 notes which would be 3/4. Okay, so but yeah, you can whichever is easier for you to direct rather than having to go, which will get tiring. So JJ then asks, so what would the time signature be on Creedence Clearwater Revival Susie Q, since the snare is on 1 and 3, kick on 2 and 4? Is it still in 4/4? Probably. I'm not familiar with that song, but yeah, probably. And it's just a case of it's reversed. So normally you'd expect the kick to be on 1 and 3 and the snare drum to be 2 and 4. Sometimes it's quite fun to reverse that. And sometimes to flip it back as well. In fact, you find that there are some popular songs where the snare drum is 4 to the floor and the kick drum is doing something different. So, yeah, there's different ways of doing it. There are many ways to skin the time signature cat. One of my favorite mixed meters is 5/8, 7/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Except I don't count it like that because that's too difficult. So I have come up with kind of like onomatopoeic, syllabic ways of counting it. So, for example, if there's a group of 3, I would say triangle. And if it's a pair of 8th notes, like a duplet, then I would say housey. I know it sounds weird, but it really helps you if you're doing odd rhythms, if you're doing odd meters, like if you're doing 5/8 followed by 7/8. So 5/8 would be triangle, housey, triangle, housey, triangle, housey, triangle, housey. And then, of course, 7 would be housey, housey, triangle, housey, housey, triangle, housey, housey, triangle, housey, housey, triangle. So if you're going to put the 2 together, housey, housey, sorry, what am I doing first? 5, then 7. 5, then 7. So it would be housey, triangle, housey, housey, triangle, housey, triangle, housey, housey, triangle, da 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 da. And that helps you to phrase it. So there you go. That's how you do mixed meters. Interesting starting point that tonight that we've started on rhythm and mixed meters. So yeah, so housey triangle is a really good way of doing triplets and duplets. And that's going to help you do all those odd meters. So 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15. You can do all of that. So yeah, and of course you can use whatever syllabic phrases you like. You could use, find something that has 3 syllables, find something that has 2, and then stick to that. The triangle conducting thing is how I learned. Yeah, if you're doing 3, it's not quite triangle, but yeah, I suppose it sort of is, because you'd be going 1. Most cases you're supposed to go out, so you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Sort of a triangle. So then if you're going to do duplet and then triplet, it'd be 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. That's going to get hard. If you're conducting very fast 5/8, that's going to be really hard. So what you have to do, if you're doing a fast tempo and you're conducting that, you have to just do the long notes. So in this case, it would be a quarter note and then a dotted quarter note, because a dotted quarter note is 3/8. So 2 plus 3 is 5. So you go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, da 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 da. So it'd be an odd 2/4, kind of, would be the way you'd conduct that. So there you go. Yes, folks, just to add to the list of things that you have never known about me before, I am a qualified conductor. When I was doing, when I was at what we call sixth form, which would be kind of like 16 to 18 at college, part of the course that I did there was conducting, and I had to conduct 2 movements of Holst's The Planets, and we were able to choose which movement we wanted to do. I chose the 2 really, really hard ones, which is Mars, because there is so much going on, and it's relentless, and it's in 5/4, and then of course there's Neptune, which is the very last of the suite. It's also in 5/4, but here's the thing. What makes Neptune really hard to conduct is the fact that there is so little going on. It's so easy to get lost, because sometimes you have a page which is just 2 bars, and all it is different glissandos on I think the 4 harps that you have there. So there you go. Frank, did I miss your post? Sorry, I was too involved in that particular talking point. Many great conductors use a triangle. Yes, you're supposed to. It is kind of a triangle. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But you wouldn't do a triangle for 4. You go 1, you go down, in, out, and up. Down, in, out, and up. Making the down the strongest bit, and then the up the next strongest. So there you go. Can you set up Studio One in mixed meters? You can certainly insert different time signatures. Is there a way in Studio One to change the MIDI instruments to A equals 432 instead of A 440? Not directly, because the prevailing tuning for Western music is 440 and has been for quite a while. Which is why David Rudder says Money, Pink Floyd. Yeah, that's in 7/4, not 7/8. But yeah, it's a fantastic song. I love that song because the way they use the cash registers. So let me just back up a little minute to a question about setting up Studio One. Perry says, can you set up Studio One in mixed meters? You can insert different time signatures. So if you've got mixed meters, so you've got like 5 and 7 alternating all the way through your song, you're going to have to set up your song to do that all the way through. So you're going to have your first time, your main time signature as the very first time signature of your song. So if your first bar is in 5/8, you set Studio One to 5/8, and then you just go through and you insert a new time signature for 7/8 for the next bar. Then you have to insert a new one to revert it back to 5/8. So you have to do this quite a lot. It is quite a lot of work. There, as far as I know, there is no automated process for doing it yet, but who knows? I'm sure this is a feature request that will appeal to composers in particular. That you can, there should be a way of doing it so you can have alternate different meters. Put in a feature request, Perry. That's what I would suggest. A Studio One feature request. I'm not quite sure what thread that would come under in the Studio One feature request. As I am a forum moderator, if you were to just put it in, if you're not really sure where to put it in, just put it in the main Studio One feature request forum thread in answers.presonus.com. I will find it and I will relocate it to the appropriate one. Okay, I can do that for you. That's fine. Yeah. So yeah, sorry, Chris. I kind of skated over the whole 432 versus 440 thing because it's a relatively controversial question. A lot of people think that we should be in 432 because of some kind of harmonic frequencies of the planet, etc., for which there is almost zero documentary evidence. However, Western music, the Renaissance period, the Baroque period, the late Baroque period into the classical period, and from the classical period into the Romantic period, there were various different tunings. And in fact, some of them still exist in parts of Germany and Austria and Italy. There are still some variations. But for the most part, in the United Kingdom and the United States, and there is a lot of discussion afoot to ensure that it's standardized around the Western world, that tuning is 440. A equals 440. Some say that that's harder for brass instruments because of their inherent design flaws, but you see, that's what your third valve slider is for, so you can adjust for that with your little finger. And of course, trombones, it's easy. You just adjust your intonation with your slide. But yeah, that's a great question. So it's Maestro, then says Paul. Chris argues that 432 is really more pleasant to the ear. I would argue not. For me, really, I am one of those people that has perfect pitch, and anything very much more than 2 cycles per second plus minus of 440 gives me a headache. It just does. So if somebody is playing their instrument really, really slightly sharp or really, really slightly flat, it really grates me totally right the way through me. So yeah, but that said, a lot of period music. So if you're playing, let's say you're playing one of Bach's violin concertos, you would be playing on period instruments by and largely, and they tend to be recorded at the tuning for that particular period, which would be it's not 432. I forget what it is, but it's not 432. I can't quite remember what the Baroque era tuning was, but it wasn't 432. So yeah. Let's see. Robert Overbeek is talking about B.B. King and his ability to not play. And you know what? You know that you have really arrived as an improviser if you know when to leave space, if you have the maturity and the confidence in your ability to play to leave space. You're a good soloist. You are really, really good. Miles Davis would sometimes leave 2, 3, 4, 5 bars, sometimes where he just isn't playing. It's not that he is being passive. No, he's being active. He's actively not playing. And Chris is saying there are many tunings between 430 and 445. Yes, there most certainly were in the classical period, the early classical period, the Baroque period, and even in fact on to like the late Romantic period, almost getting into the 20th century. And then things started to get standardized around 440. Because ultimately there has to be some kind of standardization. B7 says if you're used to 440, you're going to love 440. There are interesting pictures online of water molecules exposed to 432 and 440. And to think we are mostly water, we could learn from that. Yeah, there's that argument. Again, okay. I have heard that argument before about water molecules and the fact that we have a lot of water within our bodies, but we also have a lot of resonant cavities, and we also have bones that have different densities. We also have flesh and sinew. So argument doesn't really quite hold up, to be honest. David Rutter is okay. Okay, yeah, we're not going to get into this. Okay, this is a rabbit run that I'm not going to get into. Okay, just so that you know. And that's not just for David. I'm not having a go at you. Quite honestly, I'm really not having a go at you. It's just that this is a whole rabbit run, and there are a lot of counter arguments to do with various relationships between particular frequencies in terms of spiritual things. That's a whole nother argument that is way outside of the scope of Songwriting Simplified. Okay, so I know that this is something you know a lot about, David, and I respect that you know a lot about that, and that's fantastic, but it really is outside of the scope of what we're doing here. So there we go. Perry says, I'm also a piano technician and a piano tuner, and there are equal and well-tempered tuning methods. Maybe the guys are referring to this. Yeah, I would suggest you're probably right. And I think probably that's where the crux of things lies. And, there is a lot of good information out there, but there's also an awful lot of misinformation out there about what we should tune to and all of that. And, what is the key center of the universe and all of that. To be honest, I would much rather just make music. Preferably where we're all in tune with each other. Deer Creek says, with perfect pitch, out of tune with each other, I can certainly understand. Explain why, if everyone is tuned to the same, i.e. 430, is it disturbing? Is not cycles to note just a manufactured measurement? Good question. Again, like I said, we're kind of going down this rabbit run that I don't want to go down because it's outside of the scope of this show. So yeah, I'm not really going to keep going down this one. So really sorry about that. It really would be for another stream. Maybe on my regular live stream on Sunday, this is something we could talk about. Okay. But really, for Songwriting Simplified, we're getting into something that's way outside of the scope of it, because really we're meant to be talking about songwriting, not about various tuning methods. So I do apologize, guys, and if that upsets you or offends you, I apologize. And if you want to sit this particular episode out, that's fine. I really don't mind. I totally respect your positions, everybody. So, Just Bob says, what is your favorite chord progression and why? My favorite chord progression is the blues, because blues is fun and you don't have to think about playing blues. Everybody knows the blues. Now, I might add a few extra chords to it, but fundamentally, I'm playing chords 1, chord 4, and chord 5. Everybody can play those chords. Everybody can jam on those changes. It's pretty easy. So that's pretty much my favorite. That's pretty much my favorite set of chord changes, really. But I do have a second, if I'm allowed, by the scope of your question, if I'm allowed to have a second set of chord changes. My second set would be the chord changes to George Gershwin's I Got Rhythm, because pretty much every bebop standard from 1942 onwards to 1954 was based around a lot of those chord changes with substitution chord and everything else thrown in. There was a question earlier, I forget who asked it. I have to go look, but somebody asked Paul Lucas, where would I recommend someone like myself to start to learn music theory? I could recommend a lot of resources that you could go look at. I would recommend actually that you go to where would you find this? I have to think. I would recommend that you go and have a look at the Trinity Examination Board. I think that's what they're called. They might not be, but anyway. And what they do is they do music theory. They do a complete music theory course, and it's all graded. So it takes you from grade 1 all the way through to grade 8. And I would heartily recommend that you go and get the learning materials for that. As I say, I can't quite remember what it's called because it's been a long time since I studied music theory from that position. So yeah, I hope that helps. Perry says love blues as well. Yeah, me too. Frank Wagner says B7, my go-to MIDI editor is Sibelius 8. You know what? I was a long time user of Sibelius. I used it for a lot of years. And you recommend downloading MuseScore 2? Yes, I also have MuseScore 2. It is very good. But it doesn't work with Studio One. That's correct. Neither does Sibelius. However, from what I hear, Sibelius may well be getting some kind of interoperability with Pro Tools. But don't quote me on that. Not quite sure. But yeah, MuseScore is free, but it does not work with Studio One. That is correct. It's standalone only. Online tutorials are great for instructions, save formats, and many. Yes, you can save a lot of different formats from MuseScore. And generally speaking, if your sound card your native sound card on your computer is equipped with general MIDI sounds, it will use those sounds to play back your score. Would-be says, what is my favorite blues progression? Well, pretty much the basic, but I also like a good 1-6-2-5-1 turnaround. So I might do something. If I'm playing blues in F, let's say I'm playing a nice slow one. I would do this. F, D, G, C. And and I go to B flat here. Then back to F. But sometimes I do this as well. I extend the turnaround, so I go F, E7, E flat major 7, D7, G minor, C, and then I might go F, A flat, D flat, G flat. Yeah, I like extending the turnaround backwards like that. Bobby says, sorry, don't like blues. That's okay. If you like rock music is indelibly and inextricably linked to blues, I'm afraid. If you like heavy metal music, same deal. You don't get heavy rock music, you don't get heavy metal music, you don't get screamo, you don't get thrash, you don't get any of that stuff without the blues. And incidentally, you don't get any of that stuff without jazz either, because jazz and blues are brothers, twin brothers, nonetheless. Many a guitarist has made a career out of the good old pentatonic scale. Yes, Eric Clapton is definitely one, but he likes to use modes as well. So Eric Clapton would use major and minor pentatonic scales, but he would also intertwine it with Ionian mode, Mixolydian mode, and Dorian mode as well. So he likes to mix them up, which is very, very cool. Mixing modes in with pentatonics is fantastic in blues. Paul says, I could just sit here and listen to Johnny play. Yeah, thanks for that. David says, wait until he uses both hands. Well, I was. At least I thought I was anyway. Perry says, everyone is sitting at their computers, nodding our heads, and fucking John Mayer, where Johnny's playing. Thank you very much. Chris says, Berkeley has many online courses that you can audit, which means you can check them out, not pay for, and still have access to the instructional videos. Yes. Berkeley is another fantastic resource. And they are extremely thorough as well. So definitely worth going to check those out. Actually, Berkeley do a really fantastic arranging course as well. I don't know if you can still get access to it, but certainly a few years back, one of my old tutors from my university days was at Berkeley teaching that course. So there you go. For my listening pleasure, smooth jazz, Bob James. Do you mean Boney James or Bob James? I'm not really sure who you mean there. But Bob James is one of my favorite piano players and composer arrangers. Love the way he plays piano. Dietrich says EC had no idea what mode he was playing. He could just hear what was on the fretboard. Yeah, he says that. But really, I think he knew more than he was letting on. B7 says using pentatonic notes to create interesting and extended chords is so much fun. It really limits you and it sounds so good. Yeah, this is the interesting thing about modes and pentatonic scales. You can oftentimes forget about chord changes and just focus on just a couple of scale patterns and moving them around. To be honest, that's a lot of the way I play. I've not really played straight major minor style chord changes in a long time, many years. I kind of moved away from that, and I have my own sort of modal system for playing major and minor chords. I tend to stack things harmonically in fourths. So for example, if I was going to play a C major 7 chord, most of you would do this: C, G, B, E. There's your C major 7. Sounds lovely, sounds beautiful and warm, and everybody loves that kind of sound, you know. Or I could put it in this inversion with the major 7 at the bottom. But while that's nice, I prefer, and you have got fourths, you've got a fourth there. So I moved this minor third here up to here. So you get fourths. So you got an A, an E, and a B. You know, something like that. So that's how I kind of approach major 7 chords. Dominant 7 chords, I kind of built around 13th chords. There's the 13th, there's the 3rd, there's the 7th, there's the root. And then just moving that around. So I might do kind of like... So I might do this kind of like awkward interval here, the F to the B, and then an E, an A, and a D on the top, so you've got a stack of fourths on top. And you can harmonize the C major scale that way, which is very nice. Parallel fourths have a certain sound, don't they? They most certainly do. Berkeley is extremely expensive. Yep, that is definitely true, but you know what? You get your money's worth. You absolutely get your money's worth. Deidre says, look online at the lineup of the Seabreeze Jazz Festival in Florida, 4 days of awesomeness. Yeah, you know what? I don't think I've ever been to that festival either. Okay. My favorite is Parallel 6. Yeah, Parallel 6 are nice. Yep. Alan Holdsworth, yes, he has that similar approach. Not quite the same, but he has a similar approach where he doesn't really think in terms of particular chords. He thinks in terms of a whole scale, and then building the chords out, you know, taking notes from that scale and moving the voicings around into different shapes and that kind of thing. Raina is off to bed. Thank you for staying up for me, Raina. Appreciate it. We've got about 15 minutes left of the show. Just Bob says, when playing standard jazz, is there any certain formula that is followed? Chords and progressions, tone and style, or is it more free flow to find the groove when writing music? I know the best jazz sounds utterly improvised from start to finish. It really does. However, the truth underneath that is that oftentimes it is actually very well worked out, that it's usually based on the chord changes to some kind of song of some description. For example, most of the music from the bebop era is a new melody dropped in on top of the chord changes of a well-known popular song. And what they did with those chord changes was they just, you know, they substituted a few to make it harder for non-bebop soloists to come and jam with the band. That's one of the reasons why they put those, you know, substitute chords in there. And the second reason was it opened up a whole other bunch of notes and scales and related scales you can use for improvisation. So yeah. So there are fairly standard structures like the AAB 32-bar song structure, where you've got an A section that is 16 bars long, a B section that is 8 bars long, followed by another. You know, that's how it works. And then, of course, there's blues. Blues crops up a lot in jazz. But you also get modal music as well, like Miles Davis's So What, where everything is based around the Dorian mode. John Coltrane's Impressions is based around the Mixolydian mode. Let's see. Can I think of any others? He has a few others. Miles Davis has a couple of other kind of modal style songs. Sketches of Spain is very much modal. All of that kind of stuff is modal. Woodbeast is asking, will you move soon? We will not be moving immediately. Reason for that is that the place that we were shortlisted for, we got declined. Basically, they chose somebody else. They chose other tenants. So we have to keep looking until we find somewhere. Just Bob says, so it's fair to say that the more freestyle it sounds, the more structure goes into sound improvised. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. There are a lot of different forms and styles of jazz that develop, just like you have different styles of popular music. Like you have country, you have rockabilly, you have disco, you have bluegrass, you have I'm trying to list different popular styles. You have hip hop, you have trance, you have garage, you have straight ahead rock, you have hard rock, you have rock fusion, you have a whole plethora of different styles, and each style has its own unique signature, its own harmonic and stylistic devices. So it is the same with jazz, because you have swing, you have Dixieland, you have bebop, you have cool, then you have modal, then you have Latin, then you also have fusion, where rock started getting mixed in with jazz, and then you have various then you have hard bop, which was taking bebop to its most logical conclusion, which is extremely advanced form of chromaticism without it being atonal. It's still tonal, still tone based music, i.e. there is still a major minor sense of tonality, but the use of chromaticism is extremely intense. So yes, there's a whole range of different sounds and styles and sounds. Plus, there is also freeform jazz as well, and I have played pretty much most styles of jazz that there are around, including freeform. Freeform is funny. It's called freeform because it doesn't necessarily follow any. It deliberately avoids anything prescriptive, like a structure, like chords, like any discernible melody or any discernible key center or any harmonic devices or any particular rhythmic devices. And yet it still has constraints and limitations to it, because you have to stay out of the way of somebody else. Otherwise you end up with cacophony, which you really don't want in any form of music. David Rudder says, in theory, it's possible to play any note at all in a phrase as long as you finish on the right note. Yes, but then you have opened, with that sentence, you've opened it up to the question, what is a right note? And what is a wrong note? Good question. You know that the note is right when it feels good and when it sounds good. Doesn't mean it is theoretically and musicologically correct. It may not be. Just Pop says, jazz is really hard to understand. Love it, listen to it, but it is really hard to dissect and to play. It seems like organized chaos. Organized it most certainly is, and therefore not necessarily chaos. Because even when you're improvising, you're still using notes that agree with the tonality of the music and the tonality of the chords. For example, you're less likely to hear, if you're playing in A minor, if you're playing a little sort of modal thing in A minor, you're playing that little kind of modal vamp, you're not really going to hear somebody then go, if I just kind of set that vamp up a little bit. all of those notes fit. Does it sound like it makes sense? Probably not, because I'm just playing random notes, to be really, really honest. But they all fit. A minor equals no black keys. Yeah, kind of. Depends whether you're talking melodic minor or harmonic minor, and that's a whole nother subject. But all of those notes actually fitted the chords that I was playing with my left hand. Nothing there that doesn't fit. All the notes fit. So you're kind of unlikely to hear somebody do this with the same kind of chords. Kind of doesn't really fit as nicely. Sounds a bit discordant. And you'd be right, because a lot of those notes don't belong. Like, here's that A minor chord. That doesn't fit. That doesn't fit. That doesn't really fit either. Neither does that. So there's a whole bunch of notes that don't really fit. However, just because they don't fit when you are emphasizing them doesn't mean you can't use notes that don't fit, because you can. You can use them as passing notes. So on the way to a note that fits, where you're providing tension and release. So for example, if I'm playing an A minor chord, I can do this. All nice and fit nicely together. But what if I introduce some passing notes? Some notes that don't really belong. So So the note that I introduced there was the E flat that does not belong to the key of A minor. So, but it works because of two things. First, it's kind of a little bit of a blue note. Second is because I resolved that note. If I played it unresolved like this, yeah, it kind of sticks out, doesn't it? In a not very nice way. So passing notes works. Sometimes you can have a note that just sticks out just for the sheer heck of it, because it's a contrast. It's something you've not done before. And Deer Creek says the E flat has too much attention. Exactly, because it doesn't belong. It's if you do it too much, you can labor it. But if you use it sparingly, like if I was to play a phrase and only use the E flat once in that phrase, we might have something where that E flat really, really works. All right, so I used it there in ways where it does fit. E flat works as much as the G flat in your example. Yes, it would, because the G flat would kind of like be the sixth of the harmonic minor scale. So yeah, there's the sixth. So you'd have. So that would work. So the G flat kind of does sort of belong. Vachin, my friend, is here. He says a quick hi. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers a few of the questions here about, what notes fit and what notes don't fit. And, this whole thing of right note, wrong note. Wrong notes are right and right notes are wrong. It depends on how you use them that enables you to discern which is which and when. And really, I know we talk about it a lot in terms of engineering and EQ and compression and that kind of thing. We talk about, hey, use your ears. Your ears will tell you what needs done. Your ears will tell you what needs done EQ wise, or your ears will tell you what needs to be done compression wise. Yes, it's true, but you need to inform your ears. And the way you inform your ears is by training them, by repeatedly going over the same things and letting your ears hear the same things over and over again. Eventually, you are able to discern, you're able to listen to a whole orchestra and be able to pick out that the oboe is ever so slightly infinitesimally sharp. Just that one oboe out of the whole orchestra. And that's something that you can train your ears to do. You can train your ears to pick those things out. So in the same way, you can train your ears as to what notes are going to work best and when, to the point where it becomes instinctive, which is where you want to get to. And that's what makes the difference between a good improviser and a great improviser, somebody like Charlie Parker or John Coltrane or Miles Davis or the late, great Michael Brecker. Michael Brecker was an incredible improviser, possibly the greatest improviser who has thus far played jazz. What made him so great was because he was able to instinctively do things improvisationally and make notes fit improvisationally that nobody else had previously. Same is true of Coltrane, same is true of Charlie Parker. And so really that's all there is to it. It's about informing your ears so that something that sounds disorganized, nonsense, doesn't make sense, sounds like a cacophony. Gradually, as you inform your ears, things begin to make sense. You contextualize what you hear, and your ear tells you why and what for and what this does. And then eventually you end up with something that you go, this is a language I now understand. Okay? Same with like going to learn flipping, I don't know, Biblical Greek, which is a language I learned. By the way, folks, I learned Biblical Greek. And it's a funny language. It really is a funny language. And at first, it didn't make a hair of sense to me. Nothing made sense to me at all. But the more I informed my ears, the more I informed my mind as to what the phraseology was, what certain words were, what they meant, what the context was, how they were used. Bingo. I understood the language, which meant I could understand the New Testament a lot better because I had insight into the original language that it was written in. So, that's a different topic altogether. However, it's very much related because the way you learn to speak is the way you learn to improvise. Same thing. I'm improvising right now as I'm talking to you. And hopefully you're understanding me. I said this was going to be an improvised show, and it is. So I'll take maybe a couple more questions, and then we will wrap it because we're after 1 a.m. now. Would be, says JL, I remember that Greek spat you had. Yeah, you know what? In an effort to not fill my swear jar, I have taken to using Greek words because people don't understand them. I might actually be, using the Greek equivalent of the S word or the C word or the F word. But, most people don't know that. unless they're familiar with, obscenities in, Greek from the 1st century AD. So there you go. And I'm not going to teach you a class on 1st century expletives. That's hilarious. You guys are wonderful. I love you guys very, very much. You're wonderful. You are so like me. You know what? Play an E. What's that, Robert? Play an E Phrygian dominant. An E Phrygian dominant. Well, E Phrygian would be pretty much. It's kind of dominant by the fact that it has a flat 7, so. I suppose if it was like kind of like let me think. Something like that. I think that's kind of like Phrygian dominant because it has the major third and the 7th there. Something like that. David Rudder says, would you be embarrassed to learn most of us are here on a time travel trip from ancient Athens? We invented the time machine. That's fantastic. So hopefully you can tell me who wins the next 7 World Series then, because I am into baseball. And who's going to win the Stanley Cup 2019 and 2020? That'd be good. Just Bob says, what is the craziest scale out there that has no useful application? Well, that's very interesting. You could go down the whole Scriabin route, which he invented a system based on that of Schoenberg. Schoenberg's 12-note system is, it's a massive subject all of its own. However, the interesting thing is that you're not allowed to, when you play a note, like if I play this D, I'm allowed to play any of the other 12 notes of my 12-note row, whatever those may be, but each note of my 12-note row must not bear a conventional relationship to either itself, the preceding note, or the next note. So you have to really think carefully about your tone row and the relationships it has either with the previous or next note in the row. It cannot have a diatonic or it cannot have a diatonic relationship with any of those other notes. So when I play the D, let's say the D is in my scale. Now that I've played that note, I have to play all the others of my row before I can play that note again. So I have to play that and all the other 11, then I can come back to that. And that's how that works. Does it have any use? Does it have no useful application? Well, actually, it does have useful application. But you know what? If you were to play Scriabin style 12-note tonality, if you were to do that in a rock band, you'd probably get fired, I would think. Phrygian dominant has a raised third, G sharp instead of G natural. Yes, I did that. There's the third. Major third. I think it has the natural 6 as well. Kind of sounds vaguely Arabian. So there we go. So that's that. Thanks, Johnny. Take care, everyone, says Paul. Thank you. Woodby says, JL, when you write a song, is it by feel or strictly by the book? All my songs are written by feel. However, there are structural conventions that make popular songs work. If you want to write a song that is going to be broadly and popularly accepted, then you need to follow a certain structure. You need to phrase in 4 and 8 bar phrases. Your verses need to be a particular length. Your chorus needs to be a particular length, so on and so forth. There are conventions that you have to partake of. However, most of the best popular songs written are ones where, yes, they conformed to a lot of the conventions, but they also kind of stretched them a little bit. So, for example, let's take Sting's 7 Days, for example, which is in 5/4, or 5/8 rather, it is. The melody goes across the bar line, as in the melody strictly probably is not in 5/8, but it fits because of the way it resolves. Would-be sass, can the rules be broken? Of course. Learn the rules, learn what the rules do, what they're there for, what the principle behind those rules are, and having done that and actually having applied it, not just, theoretically learned it head knowledge wise, don't just learn conventions and principles and rules by memory. Play them, write them, try them, do them, and then break them, destroy them, make them in your own image. Don't become a copy of somebody else just because you're heavily influenced by them. For example, as a bass player, I'm heavily influenced by Jaco Pastorius and Stanley Clarke. Does that mean I want to play like Pastorius and Clarke? No, I want to play like Johnny Lipsham. But, I will take what I learn from Pastorius, what I learn from Clarke, and I will add my own unique sense of humor to what they teach. And, my own limitations, because I have limitations that Jaco didn't have, for a start. Mike is here. He's finally home. Welcome, Mike. Glad you're here. And please do pass on my love to your wife, and just let her know that I'm praying for her and thinking of her. And if you guys need any help, support, pastoral care, you name it, give me a call, and happy to assist you guys, because I know that pastoral care is not something that you guys in the United States do too terrifically well. So I would be very, very glad to help. David says, Pastorius and Clarke, you sound like my brother Phil. Yeah, I guess I just grew up. Woodbeast is swearing in Greek at me, but that's modern Greek. That's not ancient Greek. That's contemporary Greek. If you're using Google Translate, Google Translate is not great at Greek, I will tell you. Even modern Greek. And talk to my friend Areti Limparipolu, who is she's a choir master, and I've written arrangements for her choir, and she's awesome. I work with her a lot, but she's Greek, and she's awesome. And I decided once to write I wrote a letter to her that went with a chart, basically just giving some notes on how to perform that particular chart for her choir. So I gave her that, and at the bottom of it, I just put a little salutation at the end in Greek, which I had used Google Translate to translate. And she got on the phone to me pretty much as soon as she got it, and she said, "Excuse me, don't be using Google Translate to translate Greek. It doesn't work. It doesn't work very well. It's not always wonderfully accurate." So, and of course, it uses modern Hellenic Greek, and I learned Syriac Greek and Koine Greek, which Koine Greek doesn't really exist as a language now. Nobody speaks it. In Greece, nobody even writes it in Greece. But Koine Greek is the language of the New Testament. So yeah, so there you go. But that's, as I say, rabbit run outside of Songwriting Simplified, but that's cool. Let's see. Have you ever found yourself in a zone where the music seemed to write itself and you don't really have any recollection of writing the song? Yes. I've absolutely been in that place where I've done that, where I've sat down and I've just like got to writing. 3 hours later, I'm just like, oh wow, is that the time? Blimmin' heck, I didn't have any lunch, and I'm 2 hours late for getting the kids from school. No, I haven't been there yet. Not yet. But yeah, I have. Yes, I've been in that place. So anyway, we're at nearly 20 past 1 in the morning. So it is 20 past 7 coming up for in the Central Daylight area right now. So we're going to wrap it up, folks. And I'm going to say thank you very much. We had at least 18 people in here at all times, which is really cool. Thank you very much. And I'm really sorry that we were not able to do the regular thing with Johnny. That would have been very cool. And I'm sure we will reschedule, or we will just maybe perhaps we'll do an extended show next week if Johnny is able to do it, if he's not working. If not, we will sort something out where, I mean, we've talked quite a lot about doing an extended, maybe 2-hour long special edition show, which we might do on a Saturday or something. We haven't decided yet, but we are talking about it and trying to work it around, particularly my schedule. My schedule is the one that's horrific for those kind of things. All right, folks. So thank you very much for coming, and I will see you on Sunday. Back here, Sunday night, 6 p.m. Central Daylight Time. I'll be here for my regular Q&A stream, and maybe we will have some fun with something in Studio One as well. I will work on having a talking point and something for us to look at in Studio One. So thanks for coming, guys and girls, and I will see you all Sunday, if not before. Bye for now.